Hello and welcome to On the Record. I'm Mark Dreyer. In this episode, we sit down with Ajay Banga, the President and CEO of MasterCard. He's previously worked at Nestle and PepsiCo, and prior to joining MasterCard in 2009, he was the CEO of Citigroup Asia Pacific, responsible for institutional banking, wealth management, consumer banking and credit cards. In this interview, he talks about how MasterCard has been largely unaffected by the European debt crisis, the opportunities afforded by companies like Facebook, and how the firm aims to convert the massive number of cash transactions conducted around the world into electronic forms of payment. The global market is dominated by a small number of players, including Visa, MasterCard and American Express, and saturation in parts of the West is impressive. Within the last decade, the number of credit cards in the US has been as high as 5 cards per person. But elsewhere, cash is still king. China's spending habits are changing, but consumers still overwhelmingly use notes instead of cards. Credit card companies point out that it's the banks, not them, who actually issue the cards, but it's still very much in their interests to continue the drive towards plastic. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, MasterCard's results from the fourth quarter of last year show that the company had over 500 million net income, up nearly 24%. What do you put that performance down to?
Well, we've had a very good year over the last couple of years, in fact. And part of it is the way our business grows. It grows not only because of the whole sort of personal consumption expenditure in the world, but also because of the conversion of that expenditure from cash to electronic forms of commerce. 85% of the world's retail transactions are still in cash and check. Only 15% are in electronic commerce. But that's changing because of many secular reasons behind it. And we benefit from that. So I think a large part of what you're seeing is growing our market share in electronic commerce, but also growing thanks to that secular move from cash to electronic.
But certainly with continued economic woes all around the world, up 24%, you certainly seem to have weathered that pretty well.
Yes, the company's had a couple of good years, as I said, through this period. And part of that is because we don't actually lend any money. We're a payments business. We're a technology company in the payments industry. We don't actually lend. And so we don't take the vicissitudes of the economic cycle as hard. We don't also benefit as much when the economy comes back. We tend to be a more stable, predictable kind of business.
Now, looking specifically at Europe, first of all, has the debt crisis there impacted your market share at all?
The European sovereign debt crisis is actually truly in the government balance sheets. And now it's impacting some of the banks in terms of their exposure to government debt. But the household balance sheet in Europe is actually in relatively better shape than it was at the beginning of the financial crisis in the United States. Because of our business, the nature of our business being primarily oriented towards individuals, we actually haven't seen the impact of the sovereign debt crisis as clearly on that consumer spending.
So total revenue seems to be doing pretty well there. What about particular market share in Europe? Has that changed at all over the last few years?
The market share vis-a-vis cash has certainly changed dramatically in Europe. Europe is one of the, particularly Northern Europe, is very quickly moving towards electronic forms of commerce as compared to cash. If you go to the Nordics or if you go to the Netherlands and so on, far quicker conversion into electronic forms. There clearly market share is moving very rapidly. But within the electronic form as well, we are picking up market share in Europe. So we're kind of getting both tailwinds in our favor in Europe.
Now, Facebook recently said it earned $557 million from payments and other fee revenues last year, and adds that it may seek to extend the use of payments to other types of apps in the future. Now, do you think this is going to create competition for traditional payment companies such as yourself and Visa?
Well, I actually think Facebook is a really interesting opportunity for companies like ours, quite the opposite of being worried about it being competitive. Because at the end of the day, when people want to make payments on Facebook or through Facebook, either for a game they're playing or for commodities they want to buy or for exchanging money with each other, they have to fuel that account on Facebook from some location. And the best way to fuel that account is still through payment systems like ours.
Now, earlier this year, MasterCard announced a global initiative called the MasterCard Mobile Money Partnership Program. Can you just explain a little bit more about this in terms of why the program has been instituted, how it will work, and the expected challenges as you see them?
So I think that, that if you look and focus on the 85% of the world's retail transactions that are cash still, and if that's what the real opportunity is, kind of like the answer to the Facebook question, where that's a real opportunity, not just the 15%, then mobile has got to be part of the way to unlocking the conversion of 85 to 84 to 83.